My daughter offered to pay all my bills. I cried. Then my neighbor said, "Did you read what you signed?" When my daughter Kristen sat across from me at my kitchen table, sliding those papers toward me with that warm smile, I wept tears of joy. I thought she was saving me. I thought this was love in its purest form. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that I was signing away everything my husband and I had built over 43 years. Everything. And it took my 79-year-old neighbor, a man who barely spoke to anyone, to open my eyes before it was too late. Good day, dear listeners. It's Isabella again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Dorothy Elaine Caldwell. I'm 71 years old, and I live in a small brick house on Maple Ridge Lane in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've lived in this house for 38 years. My husband, Harold Gene Caldwell, and I bought it the spring after our 3rd anniversary, back when the neighborhood was all young families with tricycles in the driveways and the smell of barbecue drifting between backyards every Saturday evening. Harold was a quality control supervisor at the aluminum plant on the east side of town. He worked there for 31 years, never missed a shift unless one of the kids was sick. Never complained, not once. He'd come home smelling like metal and coffee, kiss me on the forehead, and ask what was for dinner. Simple man, good man, the best man I ever knew. Harold passed away on November 9th, 2019. Pancreatic cancer. They found it in August, and by November, he was gone, 68 years old. We'd been married 43 years and 2 months. The morning he died, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "Take care of the roses, Dot." He was talking about the climbing roses along the back fence. He'd planted them the year our youngest was born. I still tend them every single day. When I water them in the early morning, I talk to him. I tell him about the weather, about what I had for supper, about the grandkids. Sometimes I swear I can feel him listening. Harold left me in decent shape financially. Not wealthy, but comfortable. His pension paid out $2,340 a month. Social Security added another $1,780. The house was paid off. We had $187,000 in savings, spread across 2 accounts at First Horizon Bank. He also had a life insurance policy worth $150,000 through his union. When all was said and done, I had enough to live modestly and independently for the rest of my life, which is exactly what Harold intended. We had 2 children. Our son, Kevin Caldwell, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife Diane and their 2 boys, Ethan and Lucas. Kevin is 44. He's a project manager for a commercial construction firm. Steady, reliable, calls me every Sunday evening without fail. Then there's our daughter, Kristen Ann Caldwell Parker. She's 41. She married a man named Derek Parker in 2012. They live about 25 minutes from me, out near Farragut. Kristen has 1 daughter, my granddaughter, sweet little Zoe, who just turned 9. For most of my life, I would have told you that Kristen was the more attentive of my 2 children. She was the one who drove me to Harold's oncology appointments. She was the one who helped me plan the funeral. She sat with me on the couch those first terrible weeks after he died, holding my hand while I cried into a throw pillow that still smelled like his aftershave. I trusted her completely. I want you to understand that. I trusted her with my life. For the first year and a half after Harold's death, things were quiet. Grief has a way of simplifying everything. I watered the roses. I went to my water aerobics class at the YMCA on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had coffee with my neighbor, Doris Fenton, most mornings. Kevin called on Sundays. Kristen came by once or twice a week, sometimes with Zoe, sometimes alone. We'd sit on the porch and drink sweet tea, and she'd tell me about Zoe's dance recitals or Derek's latest project at work. Derek was in real estate development, or at least that's what he called it. From what I could gather, he bought properties, fixed them up, and flipped them. Some months were good. Some months were lean. But Kristen never talked about money problems. Not then. The first shift happened in March of 2021. Kristen called me on a Wednesday evening, around 7:15 p.m. Her voice had that particular tightness to it, like she was trying to sound casual but couldn't quite manage it. "Mom, I hate to even bring this up," she said, "but Derek's got a deal that's about to close, and there's a gap in the financing. It's just temporary. Could you maybe lend us $5,000? We'll have it back to you in 6 weeks." $5,000. I had it. Harold's life insurance was sitting in a money market account. What else would a mother do? I wrote the check the next morning without a second thought. I didn't even ask Harold's opinion, though I said a little prayer over his rose bushes, telling him it was for Kristen, and I knew he'd understand. 6 weeks came and went. No repayment. I didn't mention it. A mother doesn't hound her child over money. In July of 2021, Kristen asked for another $8,200. This time it was for Zoe's private school tuition. "The public schools around us are just terrible, Mom. You know that. We want the best for Zoe." I transferred the money from my savings account on July 14th. I have the receipt. In October of that same year, it was $12,000. Derek had found a property in Sevier County that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They needed the money for the down payment. Kristen sat at my kitchen table in the same chair where Harold used to drink his morning coffee, and she held my hands and said, "Mom, this investment is going to change everything for us, and when it pays off, we're going to take care of you. You won't have to worry about a thing." I went to the bank the next day and withdrew $12,000 in a cashier's check. By January of 2022, I had given Kristen and Derek $25,200. I had not received a single dollar back, but I told myself it was fine. They were family. Family helps family. That's what Harold would have wanted. Then the request got larger. In February of 2022, Kristen called crying, sobbing. She said Derek had made a mistake on one of his properties, that they owed $15,000 in back taxes, or the county was going to seize the property. She said if they lost it, they'd lose everything, that Derek might have to declare bankruptcy, that they might lose their house. "Please, Mom," she begged. "I know it's a lot, but we're desperate." I transferred $15,000 on February 11th, 2022. I remember the date because it was a Friday, and the teller at First Horizon, a young woman named Angela, looked at me with concern and said, "Mrs. Caldwell, that's a significant withdrawal. Are you sure everything is all right?" I smiled and told her I was helping my daughter. Angela nodded, but I saw something in her eyes. Worry, maybe, or pity. I didn't want to think about which one. In May of 2022, it was $9,500 for emergency repairs on one of Derek's properties. In August, $7,300 because Kristen said their health insurance had lapsed and Zoe needed dental surgery. In November, $11,000 because Derek's truck broke down and he needed a new one for work. Each time, there were tears. Each time, there were promises. Each time, I said yes. I started cutting corners. I canceled my dental cleaning in September because I felt guilty spending $200 on myself when Kristen was struggling. I stopped buying the good coffee and switched to the cheapest brand at Walmart. I let my subscription to the Knoxville News Sentinel lapse. I started eating soup for dinner most nights, just Campbell's from a can, because a full grocery run felt extravagant when my daughter needed help. By December of 2022, I calculated that I had given Kristen and Derek a total of $68,000. $68,000. More than a third of everything Harold had left me. I mentioned it to Kevin during our Sunday call, just lightly, not wanting to cause trouble. "Kristen's been going through a rough patch," I said. "I've been helping out a little." Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "How much is a little, Mom?" I told him. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Mom," Kevin said slowly, "Derek just posted photos on Facebook from their trip to Cancun. They were at an all-inclusive resort last month. Did you know about that?" I had not known about that. Something cold settled in my chest that night. Not sadness, not yet. Something sharper, clearer. I sat in Harold's old recliner in the living room, the brown leather one that still had the impression of his body worn into the cushion, and I stared at the dark television screen for over an hour. My hands were folded in my lap and they were trembling. I picked up my phone at 9:47 p.m. and opened Facebook. I rarely used it. Harold used to tease me about the photo was dated November 18th, 2022. 2 weeks after I had given them $11,000 for Derek's broken truck. I scrolled through what I could see. There were check-ins at restaurants downtown, places I'd never heard of, the kind with cloth napkins and wine lists. There was a photo of Derek standing next to a brand new Ford F250, gleaming black, parked in their driveway. And there was Kristen, posing in what appeared to be a newly renovated kitchen with white marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. These were not people who were struggling. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in all the months of writing checks and making transfers. I sat down at my dining room table with a cup of the cheap coffee and a yellow legal pad, and I made a list, every single amount, every single date, every single excuse. I pulled out my bank statements going back 2 years. I laid them out across the table in chronological order. I used a red pen to circle every withdrawal that had gone to Kristen and Derek. The number stared back at me, unchanging and cruel. $68,000. But it was what happened next that truly shattered me. It was the first week of January 2023. I remember because the Christmas decorations were still up on Maple Ridge Lane, and the Hendersons across the street still had their inflatable Santa sagging slightly in their front yard. Kristen called and said she wanted to come over on Saturday afternoon. She said she had wonderful news and a surprise for me. She arrived at 1:30 p.m. on January 7th. She brought Zoe, who ran straight to the backyard to look at the dormant rose bushes through the fence. Kristen was carrying a manila folder. She was dressed nicely, better than usual. Hair done, makeup fresh, wearing a camel-colored coat I'd never seen before. She looked like she'd come from a meeting, not a casual visit to her mother's house. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. She placed the folder between us, and then she reached across and took both of my hands in hers, just like she'd done a dozen times before when she was about to ask for money. But this time, she was smiling. A big, warm, generous smile. "Mom," she said, "Derek and I have been talking, and we've decided that we want to take care of you. Fully. We want to pay all your bills, your utilities, your groceries, your medical expenses, everything. We don't want you to have to worry about money ever again." I felt my eyes fill with tears. After everything I'd given, after all the sacrifices, here was my daughter, finally in a position to give back. I was overwhelmed, ashamed of my suspicions. I thought about the Facebook photos and felt guilty for doubting her. "Oh, Kristen," I said, "that's so generous. You don't have to do that." "We want to, Mom, but we need to set it up properly." Derek talked to a financial advisor, and they said the best way to do it is to consolidate everything. That way we can manage your bills efficiently. We just need you to sign a few things. She opened the folder. Inside were several documents, printed on thick paper, with tabs marked in yellow where I was supposed to sign. The text was dense, full of legal language that swam before my eyes. I'm 71 years old, with reading glasses that are probably 2 prescriptions out of date. "What is all this?" I asked. "It's just a power of attorney, Mom, so we can pay your bills on your behalf. And there's a form to add Derek to your bank accounts, so he can make transfers directly. It's standard stuff. The financial advisor said this is how families do it all the time. I hesitated. Something flickered at the back of my mind. A whisper. Harold's voice, maybe, from somewhere far away saying, "Read the fine print, Dot." But Kristen squeezed my hands. "Mom, you trust me, right?" "Of course I trust you," I said. "Then let's get this done so we can start taking care of you the way you took care of us." I signed. 6 places. My signature. Dorothy E. Caldwell, in blue ink on every yellow tab. Kristen gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and hugged me tight. She smelled like expensive perfume, not the drugstore kind she used to wear. Something French, something that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. After she left, I sat in the kitchen, feeling a strange mixture of relief and unease. The relief made sense. The unease, I couldn't explain, not yet. 3 days later, on January 10th, I was out front checking my mailbox when my neighbor, Walter Briggs, came shuffling down his driveway. Walter was 79, a retired attorney who had practiced real estate law in Knoxville for nearly 40 years. He was a quiet man, mostly kept to himself since his wife Margaret passed in 2020. We exchanged pleasantries about the weather, nothing more than surface talk most days. But that Tuesday, he stopped at the edge of his property and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Concern. Deep, unmistakable concern. "Dorothy," he said, "I don't mean to pry, but Saturday afternoon, when your daughter was visiting, my kitchen window was open. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard her mention power of attorney and adding someone to your bank accounts." I felt my face flush. "It's nothing, Walter. She's just helping me with my bills." Walter didn't move. He stood there in his flannel shirt and suspenders, his white hair combed neatly to one side, and he said the words that changed everything. "Dorothy, did you read what you signed?" I opened my mouth to say yes, but the truth was, I hadn't. Not really. I'd glance at the headings. I'd seen words like durable and fiduciary and irrevocable, but I hadn't read them. Not the way you read something that matters. "Would you like me to take a look?" Walter asked. "I don't practice anymore, but I still know what those documents mean." Something told me to say yes, something that sounded like Harold's voice, patient and steady, telling me to be careful. "I don't have copies," I admitted. "Kristen took everything." Walter's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough for me to see alarm register behind his pale blue eyes. "She didn't leave you copies?" "No." "Dorothy," Walter said quietly, "come inside. I need to make a phone call." I followed Walter into his house, which smelled like pipe tobacco and old books. He picked up his phone and called someone named Patricia Langford. Attorney Patricia Langford of Langford and Associates, a firm specializing in elder law, based on Gay Street in downtown Knoxville. Walter told her he had a neighbor who may have signed documents she didn't fully understand. Patricia said she could see me Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I barely slept Wednesday night. Thursday morning, January 12th, 2023, I drove myself downtown in Harold's old Buick, the one I could never bring myself to sell, and parked in the garage off Market Square. Attorney Patricia Langford's office was on the 3rd floor of a renovated building with exposed brick and tall windows. Patricia herself was a woman in her early 50s, tall with sharp brown eyes and silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a low bun. She wore a navy blue blazer and no-nonsense reading glasses on a chain around her neck. The moment I sat down across from her desk, she said, "Tell me everything, Mrs. Caldwell. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." So I told her. Everything. The $68,000 in loans, the Facebook photos, the signed documents. Patricia listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "Mrs. Caldwell, I need to find out exactly what you signed. Without copies, we'll need to investigate. but based on what you've described, I'm concerned this may go beyond a simple power of attorney. Can you authorize me to contact your bank?" I signed a release form right there in her office. Patricia called First Horizon Bank that afternoon. By Friday morning, she called me back. Her voice was controlled, professional, but I could hear the edge beneath it. "Mrs. Caldwell, I need you to come back to my office, today if possible, and I'd like you to bring your neighbor, Mr. Briggs, if he's willing. We need a witness for what I'm about to show you." Walter and I were in Patricia's office by 2 p.m. Patricia spread several documents across her conference table. Some were the originals I'd signed. Others were bank records. "Here's what you signed," Patricia said, pointing to the first document. "This is not a simple power of attorney. This is a durable general power of attorney granting Derek Allen Parker, not your daughter, but her husband, full and unrestricted access to all of your financial accounts, your real property, and your investment assets. It includes the authority to sell your home." My legs went weak. I gripped the edge of the conference table. "This second document," Patricia continued, "is a deed transfer. It transfers ownership of your house at 412 Maple Ridge Lane from your name into a trust controlled by Derek Parker. The transfer is listed as a gift. You signed it." The room tilted. I thought I might be sick. "And this third document authorizes Derek Parker to liquidate your savings accounts and investment holdings at his discretion. Mrs. Caldwell, as of January 8th, $42,000 has already been moved out of your primary savings account into an account under Derek Parker's name." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Walter put his hand on my shoulder. It was steady and warm, and it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the room. "They stole my house," I whispered. "My daughter stole my house." Patricia shook her head firmly. "They attempted to steal your house. The deed transfer was filed with the Knox County Register of Deeds on January 9th, but there are legal grounds to challenge it. You were misled about the nature of the documents. You did not have independent legal counsel. And based on the pattern of financial exploitation you've described, this falls squarely under Tennessee's Adult Protection Act. Mrs. Caldwell, this is elder financial abuse, and we are going to fight it." Patricia worked fast. Over the next 2 weeks, she filed an emergency petition with the Knox County Chancery Court to freeze all of Derek Parker's access to my accounts and to void the deed transfer. She also contacted Detective Samuel Rodriguez of the Knox County Sheriff's Office, Elder Abuse Division. Detective Rodriguez was a compact man in his mid-40s with a shaved head and kind but serious eyes. He came to my house on January 18th, sat in Harold's recliner across from me, and recorded my statement. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said when I finished, "I've seen cases like this more times than I'd like to admit, but the documentation you have, the bank statements, the text messages, the dates and amounts, this is one of the strongest cases I've worked. We're going to build this properly." I gave Detective Rodriguez everything. Every bank receipt, every text message I'd saved on my phone. Kevin, God bless him, drove up from Charlotte that weekend and helped me photograph and organize every piece of evidence. He printed out Kristen's Facebook posts showing the Cancun vacation, the new truck, the kitchen renovation. He made a timeline on a poster board, like something out of a courtroom drama on television, and hung it in my dining room. The total amount I had given Kristen and Derek in cash, not including the $42,000 Derek had transferred out of my account after I signed the documents, was $68,000. Added together, that was $110,000. $110,000. Nearly everything Harold had left me. Kevin looked at that number on the poster board and sat down hard on one of the dining room chairs. "Mom," he said quietly, "I am so sorry I didn't catch this sooner." "You caught it now," I said. "That's what matters." When Kristen found out about the legal action, she called me on January 23rd at 8:47 p.m. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" she said. Her voice was high, panicked, furious. Derek just got served with papers. You're suing us? Are you serious right now? I'm very serious, Kristen. This is insane. We were trying to help you. You signed those papers willingly. Nobody forced you. You told me they were to help pay my bills. You told me it was a simple power of attorney. You didn't tell me I was signing over my house. That's not what happened, and you know it. Derek set up that trust to protect you, to protect your assets. Kristen, $42,000 was moved out of my account 2 days after I signed. Where did that money go? Silence. A long, cold silence. We needed it for an investment, she said finally. It was going to be for all of us, you included. And the $68,000 before that? The money for Derek's fake emergencies? The back taxes that didn't exist? The truck that he apparently already had? Was that for all of us too? You're being manipulated, Mom. It's Kevin, isn't it? He's been in your ear, turning you against us. And that old man next door, Walter. Derek said he saw Walter at your house. Is he the one who put you up to this? Nobody put me up to anything. I read the documents, Kristen. I had a lawyer read the documents. I know exactly what you and Derek tried to do. Her voice dropped. Low, controlled, dangerous. If you go through with this, Mom, you will lose. Derek knows people. He knows lawyers. And we will have you declared mentally incompetent if we have to. We'll tell the court you have dementia. We'll tell them you don't know what you're signing, which is clearly true. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you how this works. Drop the lawsuit, Mom, or you will regret it. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at Harold's roses, dormant in the January cold, their canes bare and thorny against the fence. I pressed my palm flat against the cold glass and closed my eyes. I'm not backing down, Harold, I said. Not this time. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life since Harold's death. Kristen and Derek hired an attorney named Craig Bowman. He filed a counter motion claiming I had signed the documents voluntarily and with full understanding. He also filed a motion to have me evaluated for cognitive impairment, exactly as Kristen had threatened. But Patricia Langford was ready. She arranged for me to be evaluated by Dr. Rebecca Whitfield, a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center. Dr. Whitfield spent 3 hours with me on February 14th, Valentine's Day, of all days. She administered a battery of cognitive tests: memory, reasoning, language, comprehension. When she was finished, she smiled at me and said, "Mrs. Caldwell, your mind is as sharp as a tack. I'm going to enjoy writing this report." Dr. Whitfield's evaluation stated, in clinical terms, that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment and was fully capable of understanding legal documents, which only strengthened our argument that I had been deliberately misled about their contents. Meanwhile, Detective Rodriguez had been doing his own investigation. He subpoenaed Derek Parker's bank records. What he found was devastating. The $42,000 transferred from my account had gone into an account Derek used for his real estate ventures. But it hadn't been invested. It had been spent. $18,000 went to credit card payments. $9,500 went to a car dealership for a down payment on a Lexus, registered to Kristen. $6,800 went to a luxury vacation rental in Gatlinburg. The remaining $7,700 was simply gone, withdrawn in cash over a series of ATM transactions. The $68,000 I had given them in loans over the previous 2 years. Detective Rodriguez traced as much of it as he could. Almost none of it had gone to the purposes Kristen described. The back taxes were never owed. The emergency repairs were fabricated. Zoe's dental surgery had actually been covered by insurance. The only real expense was the private school tuition, and even that had been partially paid by a scholarship Kristen never mentioned. Derek had used my money to fund his lifestyle, the new truck, the kitchen renovation, the vacations, the restaurants, all of it. Paid for by a 71-year-old widow eating Campbell's soup for dinner. Kristen called Kevin in late February, trying a different approach. She cried. She told him she hadn't known what Derek was doing. She said Derek had pressured her, that she was a victim too. Kevin listened, then said, "Kristen, you sat at Mom's table and watched her sign those papers. You told her it was for bill payment. You looked her in the eye and lied. Don't call me again." Kristen tried one more thing. On March 4th, she showed up at my house, unannounced. I was in the front yard, checking on the early crocuses poking through the mulch. She pulled into the driveway in the Lexus, the one bought with my money, and got out. She looked thinner, tired. She was wearing no makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Mom, please," she said. "Can we just talk? Just you and me? Without lawyers?" "There's nothing to talk about, Kristen. Not without my lawyer present." "I'm your daughter." "Yes, you are. And you tried to steal my house." Her face crumbled. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Derek said it was just to protect your assets. He said it was normal. Derek told you to lie to me, and you did." She started crying. Real tears, or at least they looked real. "I'm not sure I can tell the difference anymore. Please, Mom, if this goes to court, it'll destroy everything. Derek could go to jail. He should have thought about that before he stole $110,000 from a widow." "Mom, you need to leave, Kristen. And don't come back unless my attorney says it's all right." She stood in the driveway for a long time. Then she got in the Lexus and drove away. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner. Then I went inside and locked the door. Doris Fenton, my morning coffee friend from 2 doors down, called me that evening. "I saw Kristen at your place today," she said. "Are you okay, Dorothy?" "I will be," I said. "You're the bravest woman I know," Doris said. "Harold would be proud." I cried then, but only for a minute. Then I made myself a cup of tea and sat down with Patricia's latest update on the case. The hearing was set for April 19th, 2023 at 10 a.m. in Knox County Chancery Court. Judge Helen Whitaker presiding. Judge Whitaker was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair, sharp cheekbones, and a reputation for having no patience for fraud. Patricia told me we couldn't have asked for a better judge. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, not like the ones on television. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag in the corner. Kristen and Derek sat at the defendant's table with their attorney, Craig Bowman. Derek wore a suit that looked too tight and kept running his hand through his hair. Kristen sat perfectly still, staring at the table in front of her. She didn't look at me, not once. Kevin sat behind me in the gallery. Walter Briggs was there too, in a dark suit and polished shoes. Doris sat next to him. Patricia Langford presented our case methodically. She walked through the timeline. She presented every bank statement, every text message, every receipt. She showed the court Kristen's Facebook posts. The Cancun vacation dated just weeks after I'd given them $11,000. She presented Derek's bank records, showing where my money had actually gone. She read aloud the text message Kristen had sent me threatening to have me declared incompetent. She called Dr. Whitfield to the stand, who testified that I was fully cognitively competent. She called Detective Rodriguez, who testified about the fraudulent nature of the loan requests and the unauthorized transfer of $42,000. And then Patricia called me to the stand. I was terrified. My legs were weak as I walked to the witness chair. My hands trembled as I placed them on the wooden railing. But I looked up at Judge Whitaker, and she gave me a small nod, barely perceptible, and somehow that steadied me. Patricia asked me to describe what happened on January 7th. "My daughter came to my home," I said. "She told me she wanted to pay all my bills. She said she wanted to take care of me. I cried because I was so happy. I'd given her and her husband $68,000 over 2 years, and I thought she was finally in a position to give back. She put papers in front of me and told me they were for bill payment, a simple power of attorney. She said it was standard. She said families do it all the time. I asked her what it was, and she squeezed my hands and said, "Mom, you trust me, right?" And I did trust her, so I signed. And did your daughter explain that one of those documents transferred ownership of your home to a trust controlled by her husband? Patricia asked. No, she did not. Did she explain that another document gave her husband the authority to liquidate your savings? No. Did she leave you copies of anything you signed? No. She took everything with her. And what happened when you discovered the true nature of those documents? I paused. I looked at Kristen. She was staring at the table, her jaw clenched. Derek was whispering something to Craig Bowman. My world fell apart, I said quietly. I realized my daughter had betrayed me, that she and her husband had been using me for years, that the money I gave them, money my husband worked 31 years to earn, had been spent on vacations and trucks and kitchen countertops while I ate canned soup for dinner and skipped my dental appointments. The courtroom was silent. Craig Bowman cross-examined me. He tried to suggest that I had understood the documents, that I had been careless, that my failing memory might have confused the events. Patricia objected repeatedly, and Judge Whitaker sustained almost every objection. At one point, Judge Whitaker looked directly at Craig Bowman and said, "Counselor, Dr. Whitfield has already established that this woman's cognition is fully intact. If your strategy is to impugn her mental capacity, you're going to need more than innuendo." Derek Parker took the stand in his own defense. He claimed the trust was set up for Dorothy's protection. He claimed the $42,000 transfer was a temporary measure to consolidate funds. He said the loans were family transactions that he always intended to repay. Patricia cross-examined him for 45 minutes. She dismantled every claim. She showed the court that the trust beneficiary was Derek himself, not me. She showed the credit card payments, the car down payment, the vacation rental. She asked Derek to explain the Cancun trip in November 2022, which occurred 10 days after I gave them $11,000. Derek stammered. That trip was planned months before. It was already paid for. Patricia pulled up his credit card statement. According to your own bank records, Mr. Parker, the resort charges totaling $4,780 were posted on November 16, 2022. 8 days after Mrs. Caldwell's check for $11,000 was deposited into your account. Would you like to revise your testimony? Derek's attorney whispered to him. Derek said nothing. Judge Whitaker delivered her ruling on May 3, 2023. I was in Patricia's office when the call came. Patricia put her on speaker. In the matter of Caldwell versus Parker, Judge Whitaker stated, the court finds that Derek Allen Parker engaged in a systematic pattern of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The documents signed by Mrs. Caldwell on January 7, 2023, were obtained through material misrepresentation and are hereby declared null and void. The deed transfer to the Parker Family Trust is reversed. Full ownership of the property at 412 Maple Ridge Lane is restored to Dorothy Elaine Caldwell. Mr. Parker is ordered to make full restitution in the amount of $110,000, representing the total funds misappropriated from Mrs. Caldwell. Additionally, the court awards $45,000 in punitive damages and $22,000 in attorney's fees. Total judgment, $177,000. Judge Whitaker wasn't done. The court is also referring this matter to the Knox County District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence presented strongly suggests violations of Tennessee Code. Annotated Section 71-6-117. Financial exploitation of the elderly. Mr. Parker, I suggest you retain criminal defense counsel. Patricia hung up the phone and looked at me. Dorothy, she said, you won. I sat in that leather chair in her office and pressed my hands against my face. I wasn't crying. I was breathing, really breathing. For the first time in months, the criminal case moved quickly. The district attorney, a man named Thomas Reed, charged Derek Parker with 2 counts of financial exploitation of an elderly adult and 1 count of theft over $60,000. In August of 2023, faced with overwhelming evidence, Derek accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and was required to pay full restitution as ordered by the civil court. But the legal consequences were only the beginning of Derek's unraveling. The restitution order forced Derek to liquidate nearly everything. The property in Sevier County, which turned out to be worth far less than he'd claimed, was sold at a loss. The new Ford F-250 was sold. The Lexus, the one bought with my money, was repossessed by the dealer when Derek fell behind on payments. The house in Farragut, the one with the beautiful kitchen that my $68,000 had helped fund, was put on the market in September of 2023 to satisfy the judgment, and then Kristen filed for divorce. It was finalized in November of 2023. According to Kevin, who heard through a mutual friend, Kristen told the divorce court that Derek had controlled the finances and manipulated her into participating. Maybe that was partly true. Maybe it wasn't. I'll never know for certain. But I know this. Kristen sat at my table and looked me in the eye and lied. Whatever Derek controlled, she controlled her own mouth, and she chose to use it to deceive her mother. Derek moved into a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of Knoxville. He lost 2 of his biggest clients when the case became public. A local news station had picked up the story. Knoxville man charged with financial exploitation of elderly mother-in-law, and Derek's name was all over the internet. His reputation in real estate was destroyed. The last I heard, through Kevin, he was working as a property manager for a rental company, earning a fraction of what he used to make. Kristen moved into a small rental house near Powell with Zoe. She didn't contact me for months. Then, one Saturday in December of 2023, I ran into her at the Kroger on Broadway. I was in the cereal aisle. She was coming around the corner with Zoe, who had grown 2 inches since I last saw her. Zoe saw me first and ran toward me with her arms open. "Grandma!" she shouted. I knelt down and held that child. I held her so tight I could feel her heart beat against my chest. I kissed the top of her head and told her I loved her. When I stood up, Kristen was standing there. She looked older, drawn. She was wearing a plain jacket and worn-out sneakers. No expensive perfume, no camel-colored coat. "Mom," she said. I looked at her. My daughter. The baby I'd held in the